name is Amelia Wildermuth. I am the chapter president of Phi Beta Lambda, which is a business honors club at Montgomery County Community College.
And I'm Zachary. I'm the vice president of PBL, or the PBL chapter.
So as part of Women's History Month, we wanted to discuss women's leadership roles, and we invited two trustees on Montgomery County Community College's board, and who are both female leaders and entrepreneurs in their fields for our panel discussion. So we were pleased to introduce Montco's Board of Trustees, Eleanor Dezzi and Anisha Keeys. Would you both be able to introduce yourselves briefly, starting off with Trustee Dezzi and then going to Trustee Keeys?
Good morning. My name is Eleanor Dezzi. I've been a trustee here for about 5 years at Montgomery County Community College. I started out my career after finishing college, and I went to college here in Montgomery County, Gwynedd Mercy University. My degree is in business, and I worked in the private sector for many years. But I always had a love of politics, political science, and community involvement. And so after many years in the private sector, I transitioned and worked in the House of Representatives as a legislative aide. I then joined the administration in the city of Philadelphia of Mayor W. Wilson Goode as part of his executive team, and I was director of his Office of Neighborhoods, a part of his cabinet. And then, after that administration was over, I worked for Governor Casey and Lieutenant Governor Singal in their administration as the special assistant for Southeast Pennsylvania. So I worked in Philadelphia, Delaware, Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester counties. When that administration ended, I then started my own consulting firm. So we do the Dezzi Group, we do lobbying, government relations, political consulting. And during that time, I also joined the administration of Mayor John Street and worked on the Philadelphia Zoning Board for 10 years. As you know, zoning is an important component of communities and neighborhoods and really determines the viability and sustainability of communities and neighborhoods. So I started my business, and we've just, a few weeks ago, celebrated our 25th anniversary. And I stepped down as president of the company, and my son is now the president. So it truly is a family business.
So I am Anisha Keeys. I've been a trustee. This is my 7th year as a trustee. I started my career pretty randomly. I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I initially went to school to do that, and some kind of way I ended up starting my career as a grant writer, and so continued my career in philanthropy, got progressively different positions, and had the opportunity to work at a lot of pretty large nonprofits, and it turned into like grant writing to nonprofit like leadership and management. So I've worked places like the American Red Cross, the American Heart Association, where I bought the Heart Walk to the Philadelphia Marketplace. I worked at Teach for America, and then I started my own business in between all of those things. And it's a consulting practice that helps nonprofits with capacity building. So capacity in terms of philanthropic dollars, but also capacity in terms of human capital. And so now I work more solidly in the human capital space. I still consult, and I also work for a biotechnology company, helping them fill roles in the biotechnology space.
Wow, thank you for those introductions.
Sure.
So for our first question, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you, and why is it important in your workplace?
Okay. Well, I think when I started my career, especially when I transitioned to work in politics and political science, there were very few women. So I think women felt a little lonely. And we decided that, you know, we brought something to the table. And if you notice, there's been, I'd say in the 80s and 90s, there was a thrust of women getting involved in politics, business, and what have you. We still have not come very far in terms of the Fortune 500 companies and what have you. I would say if you looked at the business world, there's still tremendous work to be done for inclusion, not only for women, but minorities, especially black women. And by the way, it's been a great week with Judge Jackson testifying. She's going to the Supreme Court. Yeah. That is monumental. And I think that, you know, I have all sons, but now I have 3 granddaughters. And I think it has put something in me having granddaughters that I want to make sure the doors are open for them. One of the things I've done is with 3 other women in Philadelphia, I founded an organization called the Genevieve Society. And we're an organization, nonprofit, that promotes women, assists women, and mentors women so that they can get to that next level. When I started out, there was no one there. And I think we all need a mentor or an advocate. And it can be, you know, a parent, it can be a friend. In my case, it was my husband. My husband was my biggest supporter in making sure that doors were opened for me and listening to me when I had problems and what have you. Until I see more women in leadership positions in business, in government, and in communities, I do not think that inclusion has been met. Especially, you know, when I think about it, I really am concerned about the fact that I think women are the better multitaskers. I mean, we are the ones that, you know, we not only have the jobs, but we're raising children. We are the nurturers. We're taking care of homes. I mean, you know, and don't get me wrong, my husband was always there and helping and what have you, but really the responsibility still is, you know, if you look around, it's still put back on women. So we still have a ways to go. But I do think, number one, we're doing better, and number two, men are being raised by strong women who are recognizing that we have to change.
Absolutely. So what does diversity and inclusion mean to me? I think it means that, you know, everyone gets a seat at the table. And for me, it's critically important because you just can't create great businesses and structures, without the unique perspectives of everyone. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be, you know, a case where, you know, there's just a unilateral type of culture or like one type of person that's making, you know, the decision.
I just want to say one thing. One time when I was on a trip to Ireland, I was in a pub, which isn't unusual in Ireland, and there was a sign on the wall, and I thought it was so telling, and I use it so many when I lecture. I do a course on women in politics, and it says, when 2 people agree on everything, one is unnecessary. And so you're absolutely right, Anisha. We need diversity to understand, to learn, and to grow. And,
Absolutely.
you know, and it's out there that we have to respect diversity, respect inclusion, and respect each other's opinions.
Absolutely. And I know you had mentioned, Trustee Dezzi, about the Fortune 500. That goes into our next question. Going back to last year, some statistics for us, 8% of the Fortune 500 CEOs were women, and 4% of that 8% that I just mentioned were Black women. And also on another note, Geisha Williams was the first and only female Latina to make the Fortune 500 in 2017. So what are your thoughts on these harrowing statistics, and how can we as a society take action to increase DEI in the business industry?
Well, the first thing I think we have to do is women have to support other women. And that, you know, that has been something that has been very, very lacking, and that's why, you know, I helped found this organization, the Genevieve Society, because if we don't speak up and say, you know, we can do it, nobody's going to do that for us, and we have to have everyone around us saying that we are qualified and we can do it. So I really think that it's women supporting women, and women have to step up and say, I can do this job, and they have to, I don't want to say fight for it, but they have to be strong, and they have to be resolute, and they have to be there and recognize that we have to be at the table if you want things to get better.
I mean, I, you know, piggyback, off of what Eleanor said. Women do have to support other women. And I can say, just from my own experience, I got appointed to the Monco board when I was 39 years old. Youngest person at that time on the board, the most noticeably brown person at that time on the board. And I think that it was an incredibly nervous day. for me. But I think that you can't be afraid, if you are a person of color, to not only get that support and to, reach out and have colleagues like Eleanor that will have your back and like support you, but also not be afraid to take that seat at the table, no matter what.
When I was on the Philadelphia Zoning Board, and needless to say, the city of Philadelphia, you can't go within 2 blocks that you're not seeing some kind of development or building going on right now. And that started about 15 years ago when I was on the board. I was the only woman on the board. And I found it very telling that as I listened to my colleagues on the board, they had, the interest of the city at heart, but when different institutions came in front of us, I could see that I thought of them differently. When daycare would come in front of us, and schools, and things like that, I would think of like the safety issues and things like that, that a woman, because we are nurturers, we think of those things. And so I think that was one of the most telling times for me, that we really have a very significant role to play in every level of government, business, and community.
Absolutely.
To kind of pivot off that last question, what have your experiences been like personally in your industries, and what challenges have you faced and how have you overcame them?
Well, when I was in the private sector, I was passed over several times for promotions by men who I felt were not as qualified as me. And I used to go home and as I said, my husband was my biggest advocate, and I would talk to Al about it, and I was very distraught. And, but then I said, well, I'll keep trying. And then I had the unfortunate situation that many young women have, and that was I was harassed by a man in the workplace. And I went to the big boss, and I figured, he's going to straighten this out. And it wasn't only me, it was several other women who worked for me that were being harassed by this individual. And I was told, oh, suck it up. He's, yeah. And I didn't know what to do. And I wasn't prepared for it. But my husband helped me, and I resigned. And within months, that's when I pivoted into the political world. And I have to say, I do believe that women have been more successful in the political arena. We haven't gotten that #1 job yet, but we're still working on it. I went to work for the House of Representatives, then for Mayor Good, and then for Governor Casey and Lieutenant Governor Singal. And I must say that I felt that women were more successful in the political world and more accepted than in the private sector business world. I think that's the area where we really still struggle. And I think that, that's why I helped mentor women and work with women, because I had that own personal situation. And I realized there was no one there to help me. Now, I think because of organizations like the Genevieve Society, the Women's Law Project, several other organizations, women feel they have resources if, in fact, they encounter this type of situation. And I think that shows that there's improvement. Lots more to be done, but baby steps, and we're working at it.
I think that for me, personally, so I've had pretty responsible jobs since I was in my early 20s. And I think that it was always or often a situation where I would show up to a conference or something, and it's like, so where's the person that's representing the Red Cross? And it's like, that person is me. And so I think, just sort of shifting what that looks like for people in leadership. I think that, a part of overcoming, those challenges is to like keep making yourself uncomfortable. You're going to get those things. You're going to get, those questions. You're going to, get like, why is this woman in the room? And then I think, once you're in the room and you have a space at the table, like have your kitchen cabinet of, women like Eleanor, organizations like the Genevieve Society. Like you need those things to support you and to like hype you up. Just so that you can like speak, and you can speak authentically. And then that's one of my last things. Don't be afraid to be like your authentic self. Ground yourself in like why you do what you do. And so every time you have those frustrating interactions, or every time somebody's like, are you the right person? It's like, yeah, I'm the right person. You know that you're grounded in something that's totally different and totally bigger than any of those frustrations.
And I know we already discussed women supporting women, but what are other ways that people can support diversity, equity, and inclusion, maybe more on a societal level, or other ways that you can think of?
I feel like being aware and open. I feel like, having consistent dialogue about it. I think that sometimes people are afraid of how it may come across if they ask, questions. So I think on the part of people who don't represent diverse communities, being open, being allies, truly identifying what that word ally actually means. And then on the part of people who do represent diverse communities, being open and trusting, and just okay with a world where everybody is working towards a common goal, actually.
Yeah. I think it's really important that people understand that most people want the same things. They want to live in a good community. They want to be accepted. They want to grow and what have you. And I think that's done by education and exposure. I think that as children, you have to make sure your children are educated to know that not everyone is the same, not everyone looks the same, and expose them to, the different cultures, the different ethnicities. We truly are a melting pot in this country, and not everybody looks alike, thinks alike, talks alike, and what have you. Again, the word is exposure and respect. And you have to respect everyone's whatever they think, As long as they're working within what we value, working within the law, then we have to respect that. And I think it's educating our children. Very important. I mean, I felt very strongly about my sons being in, when they were young, they're grown men now, but being in a diverse school so that they saw other cultures and what have you, and expose them to that. I think that's really important. And I think I see that here at Montgomery County Community College. Inclusion and diversity is very, very evident here, and I think that's really important. I think they're doing a good job with it here.
I think so too.
So earlier we discussed the value of having women in leadership roles, but there's still marginal representation. Why do you think that is?
We still, as Eleanor said, we still have so much work to do. I see the tide shifting in so many different industries. Politics, still an area that, we still have a lot of work to do. Business, especially, top level positions, we still have a lot of work to do. So that's why I think it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Anisha.
Work.
I mean, we have tremendous work to do. Again, I think that the business, especially, you talk about the Fortune 500 companies, the representation there of women and minorities is abysmal, and how can they do it? I think, it's really difficult to say, but I think just doing things like this, talking about it, and also letting the men who are in leadership know that there are people there that could help them, that, they don't have to do it all. We are here and we're ready and we're educated and we're ready to move in and do the job. But it's changing, each year, if you look, there's a report done by the Forum of Executive Women, and each year you see the numbers creeping up. It should, you'd love to see, something go way up, but it doesn't happen. And I think it's going to be a while before we see women, which was an area which there wasn't a lot of women like 20 years ago, and now you see it is healthcare.
Yes.
All of a sudden, and it was, well, women could be nurses, but they couldn't be doctors, and they couldn't be the administrators and the hospital directors. But guess what? Now that's happening, and I think the pandemic has accentuated this. If you look at who was on the TV talking every day about getting the vaccines and what have you, I would say over half were women.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think healthcare is an area that shows that, you know, you can get in there. And a lot of women who started out as nurses are now administrators. Now, some of them, you know, I think if you still want to be, you know, a nurse taking care of patients, that's a wonderful profession, and thank God for them. But if you want to be an administrator, you can do that now. Some of the, you know, Philadelphia is the only city in the world with 6 medical schools. Do you know that?
I didn't.
Yeah. So we are known as the city of meds and eds, okay? So what that tells me is that that's an opportunity for women in this area. You know, education and medicine, you put it together. And I think that's what's happening here. And I was looking at the other day, what was it, March 15th was what they call Match Day for doctors. And I was looking at the different ones on television, and I saw more and more young women getting their match. And this one said she's going to Harvard, and the other one said she was going to Hershey Medical Center, all these great institutions. So I think that, you know, we are making strides, but I think Fortune 500 is the one we haven't cracked yet.
I think the other thing is, if you are a woman, and especially if you are a woman of color and you have a seat at the table, I think holding organizations that you're affiliated with accountable.
That's true.
I know that I work in human capital, and I deliberately, you know, say to our leadership team and our very most senior leadership team, I am going to find 4 black candidates for this very untraditional role and present them to you. Like I am going to look at this applicant pool that is, you know, traditionally like a white male applicant pool. And it's going to take us some time, but what we're going to do is find 4 of the strongest, like, people of color to present and, like, hold them accountable for doing that.
Look at it, yeah. And a lot of the, you know, with the Fortune 500 companies, when, you know, the number 1, 2, 3, 4 positions are vacant now, they're using very high-power search firms. And what's happening is women have learned that they can form these search firms, and then they find the women and present them to them, and they have to look at them. And if you notice, there's more and more women who are going to court and talking about job discrimination if they have been passed over for promotions, or if they haven't been interviewed for a position that they feel they should be either at a company or within their own company. So I think the other thing is women in law have said to other women, hey, we can help you if you are passed over. The other thing is women in law, you know, it's interesting because I think if you notice a lot of the lawyers and a lot of the judges now, there's a lot of women there. And I think they are being very supportive of women who are discriminated against. So, I mean, there's all kinds of avenues for inclusion and diversity. And everyone, and again, it's educating everyone where to go to get their just due.
And what do you think are some challenges that underrepresented groups face?
Well, I think that, again, any group that's a minority has to look to who is supportive of inclusion and diversity and get with them and find out how did they get to the point where they are joined together, you know. And if you look at a lot of the women's groups now, like the National Organization of Women and Women's Law Project and all the other ones I mentioned, you see women of color, you see women from all kinds of nationalities and all joining those organizations because they see that these are the women that are getting ahead, and not only in the nonprofit world, which is a world where we've been very successful because we're worker bees.
Right.
And that's why if you look at the nonprofits, so many of those executive directors and CEOs, they're women. So, you know, I think women are seeing that these organizations are a vehicle for growth and inclusion. They're learning that. And the interesting thing is, and I think a lot of the schools are teaching women to join these organizations, to get out there and put yourself forward. That's you have to. As I said, you can do it. You need an advocate, but you have to get out there.
I think one of the challenges that underrepresented groups that are underrepresented face is it is a very, very tough thing. And I think I probably have dealt with this for about 25 years in my career. It is a very tough thing to enter a room and be the only person that looks like you. Right? And so, like, to piggyback off of what Eleanor says, we know that that is the case in so many spaces. Find those people who are, your real advocates, but also, do your personal work to make sure that you are bringing more people into the space that look like you. And use your voice when you get there. Like, it may be uncomfortable. I can just remember, being cut off in conversations and, doing, when Kamala Harris told someone, I'm speaking, like remembering needing to do that. Like, you know what, since you want to be rude, I will have to talk louder than you. But just like making a space and letting people know, like, hey, I am here. And like me being here is as important as you being here.
And for our last question, who is a woman that's inspired you and why?
We were both just talking about Judge Jackson for a second.
Yeah. Yes, she's inspired everyone this week.
Here today. Yeah, do you have someone?
Actually, it started when I was in college that I became fascinated with Eleanor Roosevelt because of my name. And I started reading about her. And I saw that she was, a woman for all seasons. I mean, she supported her husband who was the president, but she went out there and started all these organizations. She spoke at the UN and just all the things that she did. And I've read just about every book written about her. And I had the pleasure during the Clinton administration and the Obama administration of being at events at the White House. And I told President Obama that I wanted to see Eleanor Roosevelt's portrait. And actually, he took me into the green room where her portrait hangs, and I had my picture taken in front of her portrait. I have that hanging in my office. And sometimes when I'm feeling like, I look up and think, look what she did without all the support systems that I have. So she was one of the women. There's a group of women that inspired me. I went to 16 years at Catholic school, and the nuns inspired me. If you look back at it, the nuns were really the first group of feminists. And they told me I could do anything I wanted to do. And I believed them. So as a group that they inspired me, and as an individual, Eleanor Roosevelt.
I think that I will always remain inspired by Michelle Obama and just like the level of grace and the level of intelligence that she exhibited like throughout the Obama presidency. And I think that personally, I have always been inspired by my grandmother. She was born in 1919. She, worked in other people's homes as a maid, but it was very, very important to her. Number one, to make sure that she helped to raise my sisters and I. So it was important that education was number one. And I was just joking with someone about this last night because I was telling one of my friends that I know how to install a toilet. And he's like, who knows how to install a toilet? I'm like, me. My grandmother taught me how to do things like this.
Well,
I could change a
remember
tire,
that now,
I could lay drywall, I could lay floors. But just a woman who like thought it was so important for, like her granddaughters, like to go to college, to get an education, to learn how to cook, but then also learn how to, install a toilet and change your tire if you, ever needed, to do that. So she's always been my inspiration. Yeah, and I got you if you ever need me.
Yeah, those were all great examples. And those were all the questions that we did have for our discussion today. So
Awesome.
Thank you so much to both of you, Trustee
Thank
Dezzi
you.
and
Robinson Keys.
Robinson Keys. Apologies.
That's okay.
And a special thanks to the TV crew and everyone that helped put this together.
And that will be it. We're going to wrap it up. So for Phi Beta Lambda, I'm Amelia Wildermuth.
And I'm Zach Raugh.